What's up, YouTube? This is Too Raw for TV. So I thought I would continue with this top 10 by power forward position. Just do a brief recap, of course. At number 10, I had uh, Dolph Shays, number 9, Kevin McHale, number 8, Dan Essel, a new entry into my list because I included his ABA career. At number 7, I had Elvin Hayes. Number 6, Dirk Nowitzki. Number 5, Kevin Garnett. And number 4, I have Bob Pettit. All right, Bob Pettit to me was the most dominant player in the NBA in the post Mike and pre Wilt Chamberlain era in the NBA. He's the first NBA player to score 20,000 career points. He's the he's the only player other than Wilt Chamberlain, the only superstar I should say, other than Wilt Chamberlain to win a championship in the Bill Russell era from 1956 to 1969. Wilt, of course, winning a championship on that great Sixers team in 1967. Bob Pettit was able to lead the then uh, St. Louis Hawks to a championship in 1958 over the Boston Celtics. Bob Pettit was a tremendous rebounder, tremendous scorer. He had a knack for getting to the foul line. Um, he had to change his game. He had to alter his game when he became a professional. He played with his back to the basket as a center at LSU. When he arrived in the NBA in 1954, he realized that he was a little bit too small and not strong enough at that level to play center. So he learned how to play face up, and he became a tremendous shooter at his position. Uh, but at the same time, he was probably the first NBA player to utilize weightlifting at a time when most people considered weightlifting. It wasn't Wilt. Bob Pettit was the first guy to utilize weightlifting. When Bob Pettit arrived in the NBA, he was only 200 pounds. If you look at pictures of Bob Pettit when he was a rookie, like in this picture right here, you'll see that he's a lot smaller. When you look at Bob Pettit later on, when he's bald, pretty much like Homer Simpson on top, you'll notice he has some guns. At the end, his career is about 235, 240, so he put on about 35 to 40 pounds of muscle. He became a very strong NBA player, um, and that's why he was able to play at a high level for so long in that era, despite not being, the most athletically gifted player in the league, I would say. Um, and he had career averages of 26 points, 16 rebounds. He was also the NBA's first MVP award winner. He won that award twice. He led the league in scoring twice, and he has the record with Kobe Bryant for most All-Star Game MVPs. He's truly one of the great greats, and his name doesn't get mentioned as much as it should. When I was growing up, he was considered a top 2 or 3 all-time power forward, but because of how people don't give a fuck about history, his he's kind of forgotten. But Bob Pettit was born in Louisiana in 1932. Okay, um, he had an interest in basketball from a young age, but he was not as good as his peers. And when he went to high school in Baton Rouge High School, he was cut from the varsity basketball team as both a freshman and as a sophomore. But it was his father, who was the sheriff of East Baton Rouge Parish, that pushed him to practice more and tell him that if you really wanted to be a success in basketball, you're going to have to practice at it. You're going to have to put work in to get better as a player. And he did that, and he became a starter and made the All-City Prep team as a junior. And as a senior, he led Baton Rouge High to his first state championship in over 20 years. After high school, Pettit had received scholarship offers from various universities, but chose to play at nearby LSU. And during his 3 years at LSU, he averaged almost 28 points per game. Although he did, the reason why he played 3 years instead of 4 years is because back then freshmen were not allowed to play varsity basketball. I don't think they changed that rule until what, the 70s, I think, maybe late 60s or 70s. And in 1954, his number 50 was retired at LSU. And his senior year, he averaged 31.4 points and 17.3 rebounds per game. And he led LSU to an SEC championship and garnered all SEC and All American honors. I believe this was the I believe this was the third time that he led him to an SEC title. And during that run, he scored 60 points against Louisiana College, which was a record at the time. In 1954, the Milwaukee Hawks selected Pettit second overall in the draft behind the Baltimore Bullets, who selected Frank Selby first. At the time, he signed the most lucrative rookie contract in history. I know you're going to laugh at this number, but it was $11,000. A lot of money back then, though. But Pettit, who was not a really good ball handler and was relatively small at only 6'9", 200 pounds, struggled at the center position his rookie year. And the head coach at the time, Red Holtzman, a young coach, moved him from center, which he played in LSU, to forward. And of course, initially he struggled, but he made the adjustment. And in 1955, he won the NBA Rookie of the Year award after averaging 20.4 points and nearly 14 rebounds per game. He became the second rookie to win all NBA honors, but the team finished last in the Western Division. After that season, the Hawks moved from Milwaukee to St. Louis. He helped the Hawks improve during their first year in St. Louis by winning 33 games during 1955-56. In his second season, Pettit adjusted his game so that he would get to the free throw line for easy points for his team and foul trouble for his opponents. He was a phenomenal offensive rebounder who really could get his points easy. With putbacks, trips to the foul line, and making a couple of mid-range jumpers, outside jumpers here or there. Pettit won his first scoring title that year by averaging 25.7 and led the league in rebounding. Back then, it was total rebounding, 1,164 rebounds. He was also named MVP of the 1956 NBA All-Star Game after scoring 20 points and 24 rebounds with 7 assists. He would also go on to win the MVP award in All-Star Game in 1958, 1959, and 1962. That year, he also won the first of his two regular season MVP awards. The next year, 1956-57, the Hawks would post a 34 and 38 record. I should mention that they played 72 game seasons then, not 82 games. Pettit had another fine season, and he took his team all the way to the NBA Finals in 1957 against the Boston Celtics, but ultimately they came up short. In 1958, things would be different. In a rematch against the Boston Celtics in the NBA Finals 1958, Bob Pettit would push them ahead in Game 6 of that series, up 3-2, by scoring a then playoff record, a then finals record, 50 points, and a 110-109 series clinching victory in Game 6. During that season, Bob Pettit scored 24.6 points per game and 17.4 rebounds per game. Over the next couple of years, even though his numbers would start being dwarfed by the legendary Wilt Chamberlain, whose numbers dwarfed everybody, Bob Pettit was still putting up phenomenal numbers into the 1960s as the NBA became more talented and became more of a frenetic up and down affair. 1960-61 season, Bob Pettit, well, before that season, 1958-59, Bob Pettit averaged 29.2 points per game, which at the time was an NBA record. But Wilt Chamberlain would shatter that record the very next season. That year, Pettit was named the Sporting News NBA MVP. 1960-61, Pettit averaged 27.9 points per game and hold down 20.3 rebounds per game, making him one of only 5 players to ever break the 20 rebound per game barrier. I believe, you see 5, so that would be Pettit, Chamberlain, Russell, Lucas, and I believe Thurman, I think. I think those are the 5. He, along with Wilt Chamberlain and Jerry Lucas, are the only 3 players that average more than 20 points and 20 rebounds in an NBA season. On February 18th, 1961, Pettit would score a career high 57 points and grab 28 rebounds in a 141-138 win over the Detroit Pistons. He shares the franchise record for most points in the game with Dominique Wilkins, who did it against, I believe, the Chicago Bulls, and the late Lou Hudson, who also scored 57 points in a game with the Hawks. The following season, 1961-62, Pettit would average a career best 31.1 points per game. But the Hawks slipped in their ranking in the NBA. And over the next couple of years, Pettit would still play at a very high level, but eventually began to diminish as a player as he got older. And but he was still a really good player. His last year in the NBA, 1964-65, Pettit averaged more than 20 points per game. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that Bob Pettit is the only player in NBA history to average over 20 points per game his last season. Um, if I'm not mistaken. Now, Jordan did average 20, but not more than 20. He was right on 20 on the head, if I'm not mistaken. All right. Pettit was named an NBA All Star in each of his 11 seasons and was named to the All NBA First Team 10 times. Pettit still holds the top 2 NBA All Star Game rebounding performances with 26 in 1958 and 27 in 1962. Now, if you can recall, 1962 was the peak year of offensive production for Wilt Chamberlain. So for him to win the All Star Game MVP in that era, where you have peak Wilt Chamberlain and you got Walter Bellamy, and Oscar Robertson and Jerry West, prime Elgin Baylor. That's pretty impressive for him to do that in that particular era. Pettit averaged at least 20 points per game and at least 12 rebounds per game in each of his 11 NBA seasons. He never finished below 7th in the NBA scoring race, and no other retired player in NBA history other than Pettit and Alex Groza, who played only 2 seasons. Okay, that's what it was. Has averaged more than 20 points per game in each season they played. I wouldn't really include Alex Groza. Jordan averaged exactly 20 points per game in his final year. In 1970, Pettit was inducted into the Naismith Memorial Basketball Hall of Fame, and Pettit was named to the NBA's 35th anniversary team in 1980 and was named one of the 50 greatest players in NBA history in 1996. For his career, Pettit scored 20,880 points. When he retired in 1965, he was the all-time leading scorer, but I think that only lasted for 1 year before Wilt Chamberlain overtook him. I think it was the very next season. Pettit hauled down 12,849 rebounds and dished out 2,369 assists. He averaged 26.4 points per game 16.2 rebounds per game, and 3 assists per game. For his career, he was an NBA champion in 1958, two-time NBA MVP, 11-time NBA All-Star, four-time NBA All-Star Game MVP, tied with Kobe Bryant, 10-time All-NBA First Team, All-NBA Second Team in 1965, NBA Rookie of the Year in 1955, two-time NBA Scoring Champion, NBA Rebounding Leader in 1956. He was on the 25th, the 35th, and 50th anniversary NBA teams. His number 9 retired by Atlanta Hawks. Consistent first team All American in 1954. His number 50 retired by the LSU Tigers. And consensus second team All America in 1953. In my opinion, the fourth greatest power forward ever played a game, Bob Pettit.